Welcome to my Big Break Almost podcast. This week's episode, we're going to explore when things don't go quite as planned, the biggest party that never happened. We're talking Fire Festival. It was going up in flames. That's what that was. But the guy responsible for the social media aspect is going to be the guest on our show.
Yes, we are going to enjoy him immensely with tons of questions. Hopefully he doesn't have long answers.
Because I had thousands of questions.
Yes, we need to get through all of them.
I hope you have the time. Oren Aks coming up right after this. I figured we would naturally talk about something you might have heard of called Fire Festival, but also about Atomic Milk and all the things that you're excited about.
Sure.
If that sounds good to you.
Yeah, totally. Let's do it.
Wonderful. Well, we are on with Oren Aks, social media of Atomic Milk Media, and also of the Fire Festival. You've seen him on all the documentaries. Thank you so much for taking time from quarantine to talk to us about the past and the present and the future.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is a great time for these podcasts. I'm like, let's do this more often. I feel like now that we're in quarantine, there's so much to talk about with everybody. I just got off another FaceTime with a friend, so it's just a lot of good talking lately.
Oh yeah, more face to face. I definitely think that since we're all in quarantine right now, it's the time to actually get off of our phones and have some interaction in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I've actually been thinking about ways to just not use my phone like in blocks, and how do I separate now that the times are kind of blurring. Weekends are blurring with the weeks, and clients are like thinking that they can reach you at any hour. So I started to leave my phone in my room when I go to the kitchen and cook and eat and have some quiet time in that period at least. And I mean, I come back to the phone and people are like, why aren't you answering my text? Why aren't you this? And I'm like, I know this sounds crazy, but I have too much going on now that we're like this, and I need to separate a little bit. It sounds crazy. I'm like, in 2 months, I will regret saying this, but like right now I need to make rules for myself with times and technology and my sanity, you know.
That makes total sense. I think it's good to kind of regroup yourself and set priorities.
Yeah, priorities. I think that's the key thing. I need to like stay on track here. It's really big. I mean, that's another thing is like operating a business right now is just a 24/7 thing. I mean, it's always been, but now I think more than ever, people are just in overdrive, just to pick up pieces or just to move forward and kind of make sure that everything's just on track. You know, everyone has their own thing going on. No one's got like a perfect situation, I'm sure, right now. So I've just,
nowhere in the world.
I know. Last week was a very interesting catching up every day, just kind of like talking to clients, talking to everybody around and just trying to figure out what's what and making sense of it and just moving forward. Now I'm like in catch-up mode slowly, and I'm like, let's get back on track, you know? Every single day is like a working day.
Now, was Jerry Media one of your first jobs or first careers in the social media realm?
It's actually, it came in the middle of my career. I've been designing for about 10 years now, so that one kind of came at a point where I was ready to start managing a team, but I was really not sure of which industry I wanted to fall into. At the time I was in editorial, so I worked at Thrillist and I was doing a lot of editorial for them. That looked really good long term as like a corporate spot and just kind of all the benefits, etc. And I thought, you know, long term about things, until I started running into these guys during my lunch breaks, like in Soho in New York. At the time, didn't seem like a big deal to me. They were just people I followed on Instagram, but it was like a funny coincidence to see them in my neighborhood. And it just became more reoccurring. I would see them at the coffee spot, at the sandwich spot, and whatever spot. So at some point, it just became a conversation with them. And I was like, I'm a graphic designer, da, da, da. And then that turned into like one day my boss at Thrillist wasn't in all day, so I was just watching this one guy's YouTube vlog all day on one screen and working on the other. Had some freedom for the day, and like basically watched all this guy's vlogs, and I realized through all of them that there's no continuity. Like all of his branding was off. Every video just had different branding, like his logo on the corner, his icons. So I was just looking for extra freelance work at the time, and I reached out to him and I told him basically I can help you brand your YouTube and Instagram and all your like, social pages as one, and you can become more of like a brand. So he was into it. He never thought about it. I gave him ideas. I was like, you have all these reoccurring characters, give them kind of like their own channel almost. And all these like ideas, just pitched him on working for him. And that was at 1 a.m. I emailed him. By 7 a.m. he replied. By 12 p.m. we got coffee. And that was Wednesday. And by Friday, they offered me a job and equity there. And I was like, not really looking for a job. I was just picking up one freelance client. I had a vacation coming up. So I was like, I need some extra money. And that was that. And all of a sudden, I started to see kind of a lot of dots connecting. And it made sense at the time to jump ship and be part of something that was new, especially in the space that they were in social media, where I used to work in San Francisco. I lived and worked in San Francisco, studied there for about 6 years before, and everything was tech, everything was startups. And I was like, when I left, my rule was no more startups. Just too much chaos. And this came along and it seemed just chaotic enough, but the idea was there and the momentum was there where I could see through it, and it wasn't as loose as a typical startup was. This had more of a roadmap, which is funny to say about a meme page. Yeah, it had it had legs, in the post Vice media era where things like that could take off. This seemed like it had room. And so I went for it. I mean, I gave my 2-week notice on Halloween at Thrillist. They were not thrilled about that. Basically, yeah, they gave me about a week to leave instead of 2 weeks because they were just so pissed off at my timing and just like everything was just, I just jumped ship. And I only worked there for 6 months, but it just made sense. And yeah, one thing led to another. That was my first foray into social media for sure. Like at Thrillist, I designed editorial graphics to go with the story, but it had an element that was tied to their social posts. Like after an article goes on web, they repackage it for their social and it has like a second life, but it doesn't look the same. It has different graphics. It has a different everything. So I had to start thinking at Thrillist a little bit about clicks and how do you guide them through things. But again, it wasn't so social as when I came onto Jerry Media at all.
I wouldn't even think about that. I mean, how big is Jerry's compared to Thrillist? The two
hundreds of people, 2 entire floors in Soho, whereas Jerry Media at the time we were 12 people in an oversized room.
Wow.
That's a big leap.
Huge.
Working on our personal computers, like laptops. So it was a big leap. But I mean, I've worked at small places. I've worked at big places. I've kind of run the gamut of sizes for agencies or jobs, period. So for me, it was a downgrade in terms of like office social life or whatever. But it felt pretty natural because the people there were like-minded, and it just from day one, we all became best friends. It wasn't like a job anymore. So it became, in the beginning, like the best job ever until it wasn't. A small team can get really close. I started going out on the weekends with them and going on every trip out of the city with them, and you become close. And weekends are in the office, and you stay till 9 p.m. every night, and you just hang out after. You're not really like, I don't want to go home and sit alone. I want to just hang out with my friends, and the office is fun. There's fun stuff here. So yeah, it could all be blinding. I think that was another factor to the startup world that I originally left in San Francisco, was that you get blinded by the like tchotchkes and the free snacks and whatever, but you're actually working way harder than you should be. You have no other life. So you get blinded, and I got blinded for a while. I mean, they gave me a huge pay cut and no benefits compared to Thrillist. So it's still kind of like I was not making much anymore. I was having fun, but I wasn't making much. So
how many hours were you working?
I mean, I didn't stop. It was like the Fire account came a month after I started. The first month there was nothing for me to do, and then they gave it to me as like, hey, this is like our first campaign, and you've been at bigger agencies or you've done like bigger projects. You're the only one who can do this. Everyone else here makes memes. So I took it on, and at first I took it on as like just social media, and I kind of had other agencies doing other things. But slowly, as everyone kind of quit, all of it was falling on me, and I started taking on all these other parts of the campaign. The whole time it was just me, and so I'm able to kind of create as little or as much as I want. I'm more in control of it. So having a small team would have been nice, but I was kind of in control of it. So the client would push me at weird hours, but I had maybe like assets ready, or I was already mentally ready for whatever was thrown my way. And so a lot of times, yeah, I'd get a request at like midnight or something, and I'd have to rush to the office. I luckily lived pretty close, so I would walk over in like 20 minutes. But yeah, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, I was on a flight, a bunch of sleepless nights. We had a mattress company client at the time, like a Casper competitor. So we had a mattress in the back where I would just sleep after working all night and then wake up super early and continue before the meeting.
No love life.
I basically, yeah, at those days, I was like dating before Fire and then right after. The whole time in between, I kind of took like a big break. There was like no friends, no dating, no family. Like even Christmas Day, I mean, I'm Jewish, so I basically got to work that night. But on Christmas Day, I was flying back to LA from New York. And during the flight, I didn't have Wi-Fi, but I could text. And they were like, we need you to post all this stuff. Like Kendall Jenner's posting right now. And I'm like, I can't. They're like, we'll pay for the Wi-Fi package. I'm like, there's no Wi-Fi here. And then when we landed, it was like 6 hours of them freaking out. So when I landed, my poor parents had to rush me home to a computer so I can like post. Everything was just like nothing mattered except, you know,
what they were doing.
And then Kendall Jenner didn't even post for another month. It was just like false flag, and we waited and waited for a lot of things, and I would be on dial for months and months and months.
Well, maybe she didn't get paid for that whole time that you were supposed to get it out. And maybe she got paid when she posted.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, we were waiting on her for a lot of things. But again, it was just a matter of whenever they needed something, I had to go back. And everything was always urgent. And you never knew what was and what wasn't. So it was like you didn't treat anything like it wasn't. And if you treated anything like it was not urgent, either they tell my boss and he then funnels it to me that they're mad. And regardless, it gets to you. You're always on call. Or
yeah.
I was.
It rolls downhill. I get it. Did you have much interaction with Billy McFarland or Ja Rule or anybody else from the Fire camp?
Yeah, I met with Billy like 2 or 3 times. I saw him at a Christmas party. They invited us at their office, and then maybe 2 meetings that he sat half through. He was like a very like ADD dude. He'd sit there on his phone and be like, just walk out the room. Just, you know, no one questions it. Ja Rule I saw once in a while, mostly pulled up outside in his car, just sitting on the curb, and he would talk to you through the window, like, you know, what's going on, like a little update, or he would be in the office just to like grab his gym bag or something. So his team mostly did the work. I mean, my biggest interaction was with the chief marketing officer, Grant, who's also mentioned in the documentaries, and his assistant and Billy's assistant. So it's kind of those people were my go-tos. Everyone went to them. There was no one else you can get a hold of, basically.
We've seen both the documentaries, and Ja Rule, of course, he claims he was co-founder of the Fire Festival.
Sure.
And after all was said and done, he never got charged for anything. It was almost like he's dismissed.
He said he was a victim as well at the end.
How in the world? I mean, how is that even fair?
The courts are weird like that. I'm surprised by a lot of the rulings that have come out of this. Like, I think Migos had to pay something this week, actually, or 2 weeks ago, like a $30,000 fine. And then what about the other artists? So I have no idea. There's been some weird sentencing. Billy's in jail only for like 5 years.
Yeah, he gets out in 2024,
2024, yes.
Yeah.
2024. Yeah, so everyone has some very strange, even Grant only got like a fine. Everyone got very strange sentences out of all this. So it's not even surprising just because it's been the precedent, but a lot of the people affected by this, they had GoFundMe accounts, and that helped a lot. The lawsuits will settle, at least that will end things, but I think things are still in courts. And I have no idea. I can't keep up with it.
How about you? Other than you being affected by this on so many levels, but have you kind of suffered financially with getting hit with court?
Any kind of lawsuits
Yes,
or
lawsuits.
For or against, or anything that your name got thrown out in, and you got in the mix?
I know you got recognition in one way, but didn't in another. That's what I feel like maybe happened.
No, yeah, there's a lot of ways I didn't even get my name in the title credits of the movie, but the point is that the credits for me, I think the best thing about the documentary is that my role in everything was more understood, whereas beforehand, it was hard for me to find work or to showcase all my hard work on this project without people associating crime. And they didn't really differentiate between what Billy did in his closed office committing wire fraud, which I would never know because I was never sitting with him in an office, to what I did across town in my office, which is just working super hard on graphic design, which is, again, not my job to figure out if there's food coming. That's just, I assume on every project, everyone is hired to do so. So the documentary helped a lot in that sense. I got hit pretty hard in the beginning because no jobs were coming, and I couldn't figure out how to talk about this or move with it and kind of showcase my portfolio as missing a year's worth of work or whatever it was. And then what happened was, luckily the lawsuits all focused on kind of where the real crime was. So like, again, Billy or Jaw or etc. I had my own things that I kind of pushed back on people who tried to get at me. I basically had a good legal team ahead of time before I even went on this documentary. I kind of came on knowing that everybody is a mess in this whole thing, and I'm here to kind of clean it up. So I'm not going to get dragged into it. And I had that discussion with Hulu early on, and everyone understood my position in it, and I wasn't just going to let myself be exposed for Hulu's expense. So I basically came into it knowing that. And then from there, I've avoided being obviously in court because I'm not the person who had the money. Like, there's no point in coming after me. I'm not rich. So, and I wasn't an investor. And so all the lawsuits kind of were directed into specific zones and then consolidated and really kind of went after specifics. Right now, I'm basically just in the post part of all of this. It's been, I think even the lawsuits have kind of died down, and I'm assuming this is over-ish.
Well, it depends, I guess, on how everyone does with watching Netflix and Hulu again while we're under quarantine, because I still tell my friends about it. I'm like, you've got to watch it if you haven't.
I have people messaging me almost monthly saying that they watch it on a very regular basis. Like, I know one girl who watches it at least a few times a month for the last year, just because she says that it is therapeutic for her, and she has all this like trauma that she works through in therapy, but this gives her a sense of like what is going on screen is playing out for her instead of her going through it or her fears living it and whatever. This documentary is kind of doing it for her. So it feels for her like a release, which is an interesting kind of like.
It is.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of people rewatching it for fun, but I'm glad somebody's at least getting something out of it that's therapeutic.
I like having a chance on podcast to actually get to talk to someone and ask questions, because when we watched the documentaries, which were fascinating, I know with editing, things can be misconstrued or left out. So now that we get a chance to talk, which of the two documentaries was more accurate, and are there some important keys that you think that they either left out or misconstrued?
So I think both have their reason to exist, and I think it's too bad that Netflix has better distribution rights worldwide because most people only got to see the Netflix ones. They don't even know the Hulu one exists. So I think they both should be watched. And again, it's like the Star Wars thing where it's like, which one do you start with? Does it matter? It's a different story with each one, like, and it's interesting because it really gives you a different scenario if you watch the Netflix one first versus the Hulu one. Where I think it's the Hulu one reveals that the people behind the Netflix one were part of the Fire production and the marketing side of it, whereas the Netflix one just glosses over that part. So you get, I think, more of a revelation if you watch it Netflix first, whereas you're more attuned to the realities if you start with that Hulu one. I think cinematically, the Netflix one was much better shot, and Netflix obviously has just sharper content. And the Hulu one was a little more fast paced for like the ADD generation. But at the same time, they're both eye opening. So again, I think they go hand in hand. The one thing that I do like is that, and again, they were, Hollywood is very small. A lot of what was going on was kind of heard through the grapevine, and people here tried to interview the same people that they found out we had someone. They tried to like lure them in. They would try to sneak like release dates from the people in the Bahamas by talking to them through interviews and trying to get little bits of info. And so basically both of them are just almost funny because if you also know the story of how it was released, they're both in a race to kind of beat each other. Like, there's a story to the actual documentary too that's just funny. And people that followed the release date, which was like Netflix dropped announcement out of nowhere. That was their whole strategy, was to blindside us. But we heard again, through the grapevine that they were not doing so well in the documentary, in the film festival circuit. You kind of you bounce around through a few, you kind of fine tune the story, and then you sell it in the end, or you go national, international, etc. And we heard that they had to revise a lot of things and get more interviews because we had a better interviews or whatever it was.
Well, you guys had Billy McFarland. I mean, they did.
Yeah, Hulu did, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people were really mad about that. I didn't even know he was going to be in there, but we heard that they needed a few more months, and so we were still building out things. I wasn't actually doing the work. It was more like the team of the documentary. But the idea is that we had like a general window of when they were supposed to launch. And then out of nowhere, they announced they were launching in like a month or so. And so we had a whole strategy. Well, I was pitching them to work on the marketing strategy with my agency, Atomic Milk, which was to basically recreate the original Fire drop with all the orange squares. And I wanted to recreate it with fanfare that kind of goes back to the Hulu one. There's a lot more to the strategy. It was like a 10-step strategy or whatever, but we were going with that all the way. All of a sudden they came, dropped that announcement that they were coming a month away or even less maybe. And then internally Hulu didn't tell me, but they dropped the plan to work with me on my original strategy just because we didn't have enough time. I said we could still do it, but they were just a little nervous, and I, again, didn't tell me all this, which is annoying at the time, but looking back, they did a smart move. But basically just launched the documentary a few days before.
So I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
So that was like the whole drama in the beginning. They dropped the documentary on a Monday, whereas the Netflix one was supposed to come out on a Friday or something. So again, another little bit of drama to the whole story that added to the whole fanfare of it being viral and sensational, and kind of why people were like freaking out that there's two.
Well, I will say the Netflix series definitely was, or the documentary. I don't want to say series. Thank God it's not a series.
Well,
it could be.
Yes, it could.
It was supposed to be a docu-series, but because they blindsided us in time, it turned into a documentary.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, it was definitely more entertaining. as far as the Netflix, as far as just keeping my interest with, but Hulu was really good because actually it was entertaining in a different way for me. I love the little pauses that they would do whenever Billy McFarland would kind of be vague about certain things. And then also you were the same way, they would ask you a question and you would just kind of be like, I enjoyed that one as well, just for a different reason.
It felt like that Hulu gave more facts from you and others, but yet still allowed for a little personality to come through. If you all didn't know the answer, it wasn't just cut out. So I think that was good.
That's insane that they rushed it though, because I mean it was still good.
Yeah. I mean, there was I don't know what they rushed, and I can't speak on like what was cut or what was changed or that, but I think both of them have a lot of footage, extra stuff that will never see the light, and I also know a ton of crazy stuff that will never be heard, but the story never ends. It's just there's so much to say, and from so many different angles and so many different pieces, and micro stories, whatever that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's always every interview that I give is always different. I think this one is different than all of them. Every time I talk about it, I'm like, oh, and then there's this story.
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to know, which of course you might not know this, but I am curious, would you actually tell us if you knew the outlier from the person that was, I guess, part of it, the core group, and actually fed information, like negative information about the fire fraud? Who was the outlier? Do you know?
I mean, I found out in the documentary who that guy was, but you mean while he was
working like undercover?
He had no idea. And I don't think he worked in, or maybe I forget this in the documentary, they might have mentioned him, forgetting, but I think he was just a guy who figured it out, that he wasn't on any team. He didn't work there. He just was able to put two together and did like, I think from what the documentary mentioned, he just Googled stuff and did like aerial view of the sites and had all this like basic, he just put 2 and 2 together and was like, this can't add up. So
he's a finance guy too.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things he was saying were very spot on, and I remember him getting in the way early on by starting the website. It was a website and Twitter, if I recall right. Regardless, both of them are things that you can't really tell. So he told us as his social media team, the chief marketing officer, like, hey, this exists, we want it offline. And I'm like, well, how do you tell your client you can't just get a website removed because they don't like it? Twitter too, I think that was our problem at the time. We just didn't know how to explain to him how the internet works, to be like, you can't just wish away a website or bully them offline. So yeah.
Why can't you?
Yes.
I'm sure people try. We just at the time were like, that's not what we do, and we don't know how, to be honest. We didn't know how to take down a website. We're not hackers. So as much as we did know on social media, that was just a zone that even back then we didn't cross. But we had to just pretend like it didn't exist and just basically tell them. I mean, I think we emailed that page and kind of were like, hey, stop. Like, as much as we could. Yeah, please. There was nothing we could do. So we just told them, like, forget about it. We told them from the start to not be on Twitter. That was by design, is don't own a Twitter because it's just a digital battleground where you'll just be battered all day. So we, from the start, told them to curate their online presence. So Instagram was a choice. The Facebook was only there for advertising, and Twitter only came about to announce the canceling of the festival.
You had mentioned that there were some crazy things that didn't come out in the documentaries. Are there a few things that you can share that missed the documentaries?
I mean, I said a few of them already, to be honest. They're just kind of random off the top of my head scenarios. There's all these moments on the island or before that just were like so funny. For us, it was like a matter of like, we quit. We quit about 24 hours into being on the island. We got there.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, so you never actually attended the fire festival the day of?
I mean, we were there. We quit, So it was a little, we never saw the island until we arrived. So for us, it was like a shock to see it. We thought the first night we arrived there, it was already chaos because we didn't have anybody pick us up at the airport, and this island doesn't really have an airport infrastructure. It's off the street, so you just get out of the one terminal room, and you're on like the one lane highway, and it's 20 feet away. So we were like, where's our ride? Where's anybody? And everybody is getting picked up in random, like a school bus or like a truck. It's just like all these random, like, oh, we were on the plane with some performers, like dancers, and they went to like Blue House or something. That's how they like called things. So they went to Blue House on a school bus, and we were like, okay, well, we're probably going to get picked up eventually. And we're just waiting and waiting. And finally, we didn't even have international calling. We called using our American SIMs, just anybody we could call, and being like calling in New York to our team to call their New York team to call us here, like huge chain of telephone calls just to get someone to pick us up at the airport. And then they relayed we're supposed to be at Pink House or something. And so we tried to figure it out. We were hitchhiking. We went to 3 different houses, basically walked into 2 of them, and then realized it wasn't where we're staying.
Yikes.
Nobody, I mean, it's all vacation homes on this island. It's empty homes. Even our home didn't have a refrigerator that was working, no Wi-Fi. So we were 45 minutes by hitchhiking to the festival on this island, but we had no Wi-Fi. So the night we quit, the whole team was at the house actually when like the real chaos was happening on the grounds. We were at this shack, and our CEO was there on the grounds trying to help Billy because Billy couldn't calm everyone down. So my CEO tried to help him calm people down. And he came back at like 2 a.m. and was like, you guys have no idea what just happened. We had no internet, and it was happening live. It was like online happening. We used my CEO at the time. He turned his phone on just so we can post a message announcing the cancellation. So we used a little bit of data, but we barely had any signal. So we were like, okay, we can't. And I don't have a laptop to design anything intricate or anything really. So we designed using iPhone apps where we screenshotted the logo on something else and made a post. It's nothing elaborate. It's just like a logo on a white background, but it's like branded. We wanted it to be like an official statement.
It was effective.
Well, I mean, it was funny. We weren't thinking about it, but we were just so in the mode of that page is like has a specific look that we just were like, how do you keep that look even in this announcement? And we were just in the mode of designing it. Like I wasn't really thinking of like what the internet thought of that. But I think it was Dylan Francis or some big DJ, I forget who, tweeted about how even when this whole thing like caught on fire and crashed and burned, we still had like an aesthetic looking announcement.
Oh my God.
That was kind of funny. So anyways, we quit and we were the last ones off the island. So we waited like another 2 or 3 days until we were allowed off the island. We weren't even given the option until we were the last flight out with the fire team. And we were like, we don't want to talk to any of you. They thought we were still buddies. And we were like at the port, and they were like trying to talk to me. And I was like, dude, shut up. You're not the boss anymore. Like, you can't tell me what to do right now. Like, you are in such shit.
Were they in denial on the flight back?
They just shut down. They were all like looking down and kind of defeated and puzzled. And like at one point, at a couple points, their marketing officer tried to like tell us what to do. Certain things that were just like not even like work wise. It was just like, hey, don't smoke over here. Like the house we were staying in, we like had the sliding door open and somebody was on the patio smoking and it was coming in. And he was like, you guys need to like close the door and not smoke in these houses or whatever. And we were like, don't right now. Like, so.
Wow. Since you had a few days there, did you actually go look at what all was going down after it went down?
So we had about 2 or 3 days where we were quarantined in this house, and not really quarantined, I'm kidding, but we didn't have a car. So, and again, 45 minutes to the festival by hitchhiking, and the locals knew that there's no cars on the island, so it was like $60 to $70 one way, and you're like crammed in a fisherman's truck, like with all his equipment. So we weren't really leaving because also there wasn't really much to do. Like if you went the direction of the festival, it was like just the festival grounds and maybe a sandals resort. And then in the other direction there was a town, and we went into town one day. There was they had like a huge festival in the documentary. They mentioned it was the regatta. So it was this big festival. So we actually got to enjoy like local culture for a minute, which was nice. Made some local friends. But then the other direction, there's nothing to do. But the night that the festival got canceled and my boss came back and said, "You're not going to believe what just happened over there." He also instructed us to get in a car, and we're about to go. We called up one of those fishermen that was hitchhiking, like picking us up. We had his number at that point. We were like, "We need a ride right now." It was like 1 a.m, and he picked us up, and we rode with him into the festival grounds with like our badges. They just let us in, and we just kind of snuck on the grounds in the middle of the night because we wanted to film what was going on. Like he already was thinking of a documentary that night, and because the vlogger guy that I originally reached out to brand his pages, he already had a daily vlog, and he was vlogging while we were there. You see him in the Netflix documentary. It was all his footage was used. It was and that's where you see me and his footage. That's basically the most professional footage there exists of the festival. So he had the opportunity to capture a lot of footage, and he had a drone, and he had the opportunity to. But within like 2 minutes of us going over that hill into the grounds, you could see we were the only moving thing on the grounds, and there was like one security guy on there patrolling. Actually, this was not mentioned, that nobody was like just on the grounds with no protection. It was sealed off, and it was with security on the grounds, but he drove right up to us and kicked us out. So we didn't do anything that night, but they still have a lot of the original or the best footage of what went down with, and his stuff's still on YouTube. I mean, you can go see it now, but
I mean, just to even see part of it, it's insane. Thank goodness I didn't hear about it.
The place looked really crazy. Just thinking about my first reaction was, so again, there's like a hill that you kind of go over, and then down into the valley where all the tents were. Not really a valley, but it kind of a dip down. And I remember when we were going over the hill and in a golf cart, and I just saw for the first time everything, and I was like, I started shaking. I knew something was off. I knew it was not it. And I turned to my CEO and I told him, I was like, this is not, I forget what I told him, but I told him something along the lines of like, this can't be a luxury. This can't be it. This can't be the legendary thing we've been told it was going to be. And he looked at me, and I remember this is the moment that I kind of felt like things were out of control. Was he looked me dead in the eyes and basically told me, what are you talking about? This looks awesome. This is like something from the future, like some like Elon Musk Mars colony thing. And I was like, I don't know if he's just being a CEO and trying to rally the troops at all costs to like keep morale up right now, so I don't go into like shock, or if he actually believes this and I've lost him. I couldn't tell anymore, From that moment on, it was like a very blurred line for everything we were doing. Like every activity was like, is this fun or is this crazy? I'm not able to tell anymore. Are people having fun or panic? Like, yeah. That became weird for a while.
The reason why I was asking too on how close you were was they were saying that the gentleman that knew Billy McFarland, and as far as trying to get the water, that guy.
Yeah, Andy.
He said that he literally had to hide and escape because of the workers that weren't getting paid. So I didn't know, but it makes sense if you're 45 minutes away. It's almost like you weren't even a part of it.
I mean, I could imagine. I was there for most of the day. It was the nighttime where there was like the official, like you saw the chaos of where Billy was standing on the tables and everyone surrounding him and like banging on the window. I was there during the daylight. Once it got dark, we left, but I was there all day and didn't have anything to eat also. So at one point I was told to go eat with the construction workers. So I ate the cheese sandwich and didn't think twice. I felt bad because this I thought was just what the workers were getting. And so for them, it was a salad. I don't know if it was, yeah, it was in the photo. So it was a salad, a cheese sandwich. And the one thing I'm kind of bummed wasn't in the photo that was the best part of the meal was everybody got a birthday cake. It was like a slice of cake. Like it was either somebody's birthday or just that was the, but there was cake, which I think is ironic. But
they probably ate it. And
they
then...
ate it first. Yes.
But I ate the food and was just like, okay, so that's, and it was in a specific space for workers that they were only eating there. They thought I was weird for eating with them and like, you know what I mean? But I didn't care. I was just like, food's food. And then I basically only heard about it down the road that was, you know, the famous cheese sandwich.
Huge, yeah. Their luxury meal.
Yeah, I mean, there was nothing on the island. There was, even for us in the house, we went to a local it wasn't even a grocery store because most things on any island around the world are like more long lasting. And so there wasn't really, it was like a lot of frozen stuff, a lot of boxed, canned, a lot of food like that. And luckily in our scenario, that the shack that we were staying in didn't have a refrigerator. So everything that we were eating was like same day stuff. You know, we went wild and got like eggs. We ate the whole carton in one. The whole team made egg sandwiches that day. And then.
So to this day, can you still eat cheese sandwiches?
You know, I still like a good grilled cheese. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's grilled at least. Yeah.
I thought the documentary, I can't remember which one, had a great quote that talked about the fact that you not only helped build the internet efficiently on this, but you weaponized the internet and all this genius, which I think the orange box was a genius move. And then it was quickly brought down by some guy with a couple hundred followers of a picture of a cheese sandwich. What were your thoughts on the ups and the downs of that social media campaign like that?
It's really funny because when he puts it into that perspective, then I'm able to have a good laugh at it. But there was a period after that I really did not have a good time laughing at it because it was like the internet was laughing at my hard work. You know what I mean? So for a while, it was like I was taking it personally, and I was like, the documentaries weren't out yet, so I didn't really have closure on a lot of what happened. And for me, I didn't even know the FBI got involved and there was a wire fraud. I thought it was just mismanagement or money issues. Like, I didn't understand it. I really was like, I showed up there and I was like, how did you not do what you said you were going to do? Like, how hard is it to do your job? And so for a long time, I felt like I worked on something so hard while this guy didn't work at all, you know, and that feeling of like, well, I did my job, why couldn't you do yours? So It was a very weird place mentally. But then once I got closure from the documentaries and the FBI, like their statements and the lawsuits, and I got a better picture of what happened, I think for me it was more of a matter of just letting everyone kind of be, and like the story is out of my control at this point. And I'm just glad that nobody really got hurt. Everybody at this point has gotten paid, and everyone that's, you know, meant to be in jail, at least for the most part, is in jail.
Sorry.
For the most part. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's just crazy.
But you moved on.
Yeah.
And built Atomic Milk Media.
Yes.
And you've worked for some huge clients now.
Sure have, yeah.
Tell us about what you're doing today.
Yeah, so afterwards, I had a few clients that kind of reached out to me, or friends of friends who heard about, you know, Fire or Jerry Media, and were like, we'd love to work with you as a freelance, as a consultant, you know, whatever kind of scenario they needed. And I was very confused. I was like, why would you want to work with me based off of this massive failure? And I was like, leave me alone. You guys don't get it. It was a failure. It was a failure. But a lot of them would be like, no, it was a failure. Somebody else failed. Your marketing was the only thing that worked. You were the only person who did anything. So all of a sudden, these potential clients were telling me how to look at it differently. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm not looking at it the right way. And also, my self-worth is more than I believe in myself right now. And that was really important changing point, because I left New York almost a month after I quit during media, and I just went traveling and was just trying to find some peace. And while I was traveling, these brands like Planet Hollywood were trying to work with me, and I'm like, I don't get it, but okay, let's work together, I guess. What do you want from me? So for a while, it was like, again, they were trying to tell me what I was or what I needed to be, and I wasn't sure. I've never consulted before, so for me, I'm a graphic designer. I don't consult, and so I didn't really understand what they were trying to get out of this, or how do you price it, or whatever. And then the idea of how do I talk about this? So the founder's son reached out to me, and he's about my age, and he basically understood the difference between me and Billy, and what we did. And so he was like, listen, you don't have to tell our corporate team or my dad or whatever, like who's who and all this. It's fine. We don't have to talk about fire. Just start with working for us. Like, it doesn't have to be about, the story. And a lot of people in the beginning were freaking out, like before the documentaries, and a lot of corporate clients were like, we don't want you to be public about this. We don't want the public to know that you're helping us. And I can't name a lot of these big clients that I've talked to that I'm very proud of the work I've done for, but that's our agreement. And I still get clients today that don't want my name publicly used. But again, they understand what I've done and are able to at least differentiate. So when I come on board, now at least with Atomic Milk, I'm able to basically do what I do best. And my approach to it is from an ethical standpoint, where like I know all the sides of a campaign. I've been through the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I can now share that with my clients through a service, and that service is bulletproof now. And I've actually been getting opportunities for speaking roles as well, and I've been kind of focusing the talks about that and being able to identify how something went wrong, and instead of really going into a dark place like I did in the beginning, to pick apart what went wrong and who was missing and how you could have filled in those gaps to improve the next project and be, again, bulletproof for any scenario. So things have kind of shifted, not only career-wise, but also mentally, and just being able to harness my self-worth and kind of my skills, and just putting it all together into this like service and to help people in a new way rather than designing. So most of what I do now is consulting. I would say 99% of what I do is consulting. I design more for fun and like for myself, and kind of like I'm creative director at an agency in San Diego a few times a week. Now it's online, so it's every day.
Can't get over that.
Yeah, it changed from part-time to full-time very quickly with this quarantine. But that was a really interesting shift, and being able to also help people, again, with the speaking roles, and being able to talk about experiences with people like you guys in a way that's more relevant and more relatable to anybody in any position. I think what I did doesn't have to be applied to luxury destination music festivals, even though I get now calls from those types of clients.
Ironic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I was just in, I was just telling you guys earlier, I was in Australia 2 weeks ago, and it was basically for another, not a festival, but there are like these like little elements of the same scenario. Like, how do you speak to a luxury millennial audience for remote places, etc. Blah, blah, blah. Things that I get to work on now are really fun. And so it's been a blessing in disguise. Again, a year or two ago, I was really depressed. I didn't have any money, and I was getting no work, and I was so lost. I had no creative energy to design. I just was like ready to do anything. I was like, I'll work in a restaurant. I will just to clear my mind. I don't want any responsibilities, And then again, when the documentaries came out, things shifted completely different again. So and again, now with the quarantine, people are like, there's a reawakening of the documentary. So since I quit Thrillist has just been a very interesting, like
A roller coaster.
Yes.
But it's also been getting easier to adapt. I think the documentary really threw me off, and I was like, I didn't think anybody was going to watch them, and I wasn't expecting the media to want to talk to me. I was living abroad and I was like different hours and I just was like not doing anything digital. I moved to Tel Aviv to start painting and I was like on a different pace, just going to the beach every day. And you guys won't call me anymore after like a week. Just this will be over like a week. And then it just wasn't over and I had to fly back to the States and do like a media tour basically and like just really accept that this isn't over very quickly and that people are interested to work with me now. And so I had to really pick up Atomic Milk and make it more local. So I moved to Los Angeles and made it based out here where all my clients have been. And I've worked with brands like Seed, and I've consulted for restaurants, and I've worked with tech companies like Fireworks and Grammy in San Francisco that are like TikTok competitors. And the things that I'm kind of most excited about now are the things that I'm starting up with the Australian group that I'm going to start working on the next couple months, and that's really building out a region in Australia and working with them to kind of promote domestic tourism and kind of pushing. This is a different type of project than I'm used to. Like, it's a very interesting kind of approach to things, and all my projects are so different that I really love that change and that I don't have to get stuck in thinking just tech or just fashion or just whatever it is. And then on top of everything, this week it took a pause, but I'm still going to push forward with this eventually after we collectively figure out what's going on with Corona. But I have been working on my own cannabis line and a health-focused cannabis line that is non-smokable, not vapable. So it's like focused really on promoting just having a nice day. The brand is called Nice Day. So we're really aiming ourselves at creating more of a day ritual kind of situation where it's not really focused on a spur of the moment, whatever approach you've given to it in the past. So the whole thing is under wraps right now. We have a pretty big strategy, but again, I'd like for it to make sense to the public. And I think right now launching a brand is just not in good taste. So I'm right now listening to what's going on and surveying the lay of the land and being like, what's relevant in the future? What are people learning from ourselves right now? And where are we going to be with products in a few months? And why am I doing this, in this time? So everything's shifting, but I'm still really excited about this because I personally get such a pain relief from working on the computer and my wrists and stuff that I've been working with this for about a year or so. And working on things that I believe in and are part of my life already just gives me more of an excitement than working on other people's visions, and it's really important, I think, to also have a project right now that allows me to live through it and really be my service, be my product, be whatever I'm trying to be part of. I was really hoping to change this year to be about what I wanted to work on, but I think right now it's a balance, and I'm working with clients to kind of move things forward for them, working with my agency, working on this cannabis line, Nice Day, and just getting kind of like all these projects that just bring good energy to what I'm doing, and I'm not feeling like, it's a slug kind of thing to like do this thing for this person who's not grateful. And again, Fire Festival taught me a lot of how do I want to be treated or what I want to work on, and that's just one of the biggest lessons that I think I take away for my own work these days.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're in a happy place now, or a nice place.
Yes. All the grieving is over. Now we can start.
Yes. You've been a fascinating guest. Thank you for taking us through what all happened at the Fire Festival. And now you've come out of the fire, literally, into a good place now with your career. I've really enjoyed having you in our show.
It's been fascinating.
Thank you. And if we're ever in LA or you're in Oklahoma, we'll buy you a nice cheese sandwich.
Grilled. With maybe a little tiny cake.
That's right.
Oh, okay. I'm into it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Oren.
Yeah.
Enjoy your quarantine.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
It's really funny.
What?
I think it's really funny that, of course, it started out with an orange color block. Mm-hmm. And all the colors, he chose orange. And what color is Billy McFarland wearing right now? No, that's ironic.
That is. Hi, Billy. Watching the documentaries, which were fascinating, I never thought what was really going through the minds of the people working there who were also victims. So it was, to me, fascinating to see what went through his emotional state.
Yeah, I mean, as a whole, you just think of not necessarily the employees, but just fire fraud in general. Anyone who's victimized by that company, everyone is responsible. And of course, through the documentary, you just notice that there were other people who worked for Fire Festival that were also victims of what they've done.
And not only financially, because we don't know how much they did not get paid for their work, because I'm sure that happened as well.
Yeah.
But the emotional toll that it took to have someone actually move out of the country for a year before they felt good enough as a person even to come back. Thank goodness he's now at a nice place and succeeding. At least you can see just from one story, but there is something positive at the end of the storm. There may be a rainbow for some of these people who actually were victims.
Ja Rule, I don't know him. Whenever I saw the documentaries, though, it seemed like he was right there neck and neck with Billy McFarland. No offense, Ja Rule, but it's beyond me that you kind of had no responsibility in this.
It looks like he was definitely associated, but I guess
he's co-founder.
Yes,
I'm co-founder. He says that in the documentary.
Yes, I guess they couldn't prove that he had his hand in the actual illegal activity, but regardless, I hope they all have learned from it and move on in a positive way at some point.
Yeah, I feel so bad for the workers on the island. Bless their hearts. I do know of the GoFundMe's, which is great, and I hear that a lot of them definitely got compensated. Great for GoFundMe. I think that's fantastic that we have that for those reasons.
And for every Oren story, there's probably 50 more out there of people just like him who suffered and were victims. Again, I'm so thankful though for Oren's story, and I hope that you took something positive from it. We sure did.
Yeah.
And I hope that you join us next week. Again, you can get our podcast everywhere podcasts are sold. They're free, but you can download them, and we hope that you subscribe so we can keep bringing you interesting stories like this. And anything you want us to put on the show, please let us know. That way we can deliver.
Stop having our own ideas.
That's right. I'm out of ideas. I need yours. Thanks so much for joining us. See you next week on my big break almost.